All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Real Work Talk. I'm Elena, the founder of Selftalk, where we've built a platform for top psychologists to design self-therapy programs just for you so you can learn how to address specific challenges on your own. And I'm here with our Chief of Science, Iustina Armasu. Yeah, I'm super excited to have Iustina here. You know why? Because from her, I learned how to love work. I know it's quite weird to hear that. Most of us, we don't love our work. But Iustina has such a deep passion for designing work well, so we feel happy at work. She even did a PhD in the subject. So she's an organizational psychologist, currently doing her PhD in self-regulation at work, focused on habits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, she is an influencer. She has a channel called Happy 9 to 5 on TikTok. That's quite big. So if you want tips and tricks about how to be happy at work, follow Iustina there. But our reason to be here is to discuss work design. Iustina is collaborating with the Future of Work Institute, where they research how we can update the design of work so we feel better and we perform better at work. So welcome, Iustina. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for such a nice introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I think you've said most of it, actually.
What else is to be said?
But I mean, if I just think about, how I started basically going into this whole work area, and, you said that I inspired you to love work, which is, thank you. It's a nice legacy to have. Yeah, well, work is a big thing. Work is taking a big chunk of our lives, and we might as well be fulfilled and happy while doing it.
How did you develop this passion for work?
Well, I think it started quite early, I think. I was actually passionate about psychology and just in general, the human nature. I think human nature is a very interesting topic. And it's so funny how, there was this saying we know so much about the universe. We know more about the universe than we know about our human nature. And I think that is fascinating because we don't know ourselves that well. And this is why, psychology is really interesting because you have this space to really delve into the human nature, to really understand how people work, to really understand how can we make the world a better place while also making ourselves, feel better as well and have a fulfilling life with this time that we have in our lives. So this is kind of how it all started. So it started with psychology, but then, the whole work focus really kind of started. I think it was also an example that I had in my family as well, where work was something really big. Work was something to be very proud of, and hard work was a value that I got instilled since I was a child. Hard work will get you there. This is what, I've been told, and this is also what I believe. That doesn't mean to say that, we need to be workaholics and we need to, dedicate our entire lives to our work, because I am not a proponent of that. But work is a big chunk of our lives. And we have the responsibility to create workplaces that are fulfilling, that are full of growth, that are full of opportunities, where people feel like they can develop themselves and also create something for the world. But we as people are also responsible to create more fulfillment within this area of our lives as well. So this is kind of how I got into the whole workplace psychology, and how that became basically my degree and my PhD and all of that. And my research is basically going into how we regulate when we have different stressors at work, or how we perceive our environment and how we regulate with that in order to achieve our goals, how we regulate our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors, and specifically habitual behaviors. So I focus a lot on habits. And I also look into the work design part. So how can organizations design work in a way where people can regulate themselves better, in a way where people feel fulfilled, where they feel like they're growing, and where they perform as well.
Yeah. So this podcast is for team leaders, for people that have the capacity to design work. And I'm curious, when I met you for the first time, I was really shocked to learn that scientists, they research this subject and they research performance. And but at the same time, team leaders like me, we do not Google very often. What are some scientific frameworks on how to improve performance, or like what scientists are doing in terms of us figuring it out, how to work better? So I was really fascinated to listen to your stories from science and like some different frameworks. Would you tell me more how science is approaching work and like what are some initiatives of like designing better work?
That's a very good question. Thank you. Well, if I think about, like all the trends or all the scientific trends, there have been waves, right? So science has kind of gone into a lot of waves, especially management science and psychology as well, where in the beginning, it all started with a very transactional way of looking at work. Like I pay you, you give me work, and that's it.
When you say in the beginning, that's when?
That is around the 70s, 60s, 70s or so, something around that time. And basically, because of this focus on, the transactionality of work, a lot of the models that have been developed about management, about performance, about productivity at work have focused a lot on the tasks that people do. So how can we make, tasks be less boring? How can we help people be more engaged at work? But it was very, very transactional in the sense of it focused a lot on just the aspects of task and the aspects of knowledge that an employee and an employer bring into the workplace. And then everything kind of, got a bit of a shift with the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, that's a big subject.
The pandemic actually changed a lot in how science started looking at the workplace, because it added another layer of complexity. So if we focused in the 70s, if we focused on tasks, and then we started focusing on, demands and resources, now we realize that there is a lot more that goes into the workplace than just what we've been thinking about. So after the pandemic, the smart work design model was developed, and this model also accounts for a lot of this variability of work characteristics as well. And it's more comprehensive in the sense that it kind of focuses on multiple pillars of the workplace. So we have the task pillar where, we kind of focus on what tasks we have at work, but it also focuses on whether we experience mastery at work. It also focuses on our relationships at work, which, even though people might think, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go to my work and do my work and it's going to be all fine, I'll get paid. Relationships at work have a lot of impact because actually the number one predictor of people quitting their job is because they don't have good relationships with their supervisors and colleagues. So while before the relationships weren't a big thing in science and in organizational science, now they're starting to really be valued in that sense. And a lot of the science is looking into the relationships at work, into feedback, into supervision, into leadership, and so on.
For me, it's so surprising to hear that relationship were somehow overlooked. And I think for lots of people in HR or like team leads that have like a more developed emotional intelligence, it's quite obvious that relationships are like so important.
Definitely.
What changed in the workspace after COVID, after the pandemic?
Well, if I think about, there's probably 4 big trends that we can see following the pandemic. One of them, which is probably something that we've all felt and we've all experienced, is the need for more flexibility. And that is related to time flexibility and space flexibility. People don't want to work the 9 to 5 anymore. They are okay with, working longer in the evening, but having the opportunity to, for instance, go to the hairdresser in the middle of the day or have a doctor's appointment scheduled without having to take time off, take an hour off and then come back and all of that reporting. People want this flexibility. They want to have control over their time and they want their workplaces, their organizations to give them this flexibility. And that is one thing. The second thing is also space flexibility. We've seen with COVID what it's like to work from home. And some of us really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's me.
But on the other hand, we've also seen people who struggle a lot with working from home. They need the structure, they need the office, they need the people, because otherwise maybe they don't feel motivated. And we've also seen from research that people who work from home also tend to work more overtime because of these blurred boundaries between work and non-work, because you're doing both in the same space. However, a lot of people also enjoy this flexibility a lot, enjoy the space flexibility, having to, work from home and at the same time being able to do your laundry while you have a meeting and so on. So there are different tendencies, but what is definitely a trend is the need for more flexibility. And the idea of hybrid work has become probably a huge trend in HR, and it's going to increase in the future as well. And, seeing people who are saying, mandatory return to the office. There's actually a new study in Nature that showed that mandatory return to office doesn't really have a lot of benefits. And leaving people be and giving people the flexibility to work hybrid actually has a lot of good impact on employee productivity and also employee fulfillment and retention as well.
Looks like Elon Musk haven't read that study.
Well, that's the issue with the science practice gap, because you have all of this science that is going to research, that is going to find representative samples, that is going to replicate the findings, have very rigorous methodology to actually understand what is happening. But that science doesn't get to people. There is a gap there. Because the science is published in scientific journals and
a normal person like me, I learned from you that Nature is a big name in science, I should I learned a lot from having this interaction on how to approach science, because I thought initially that everything that's published on Google Scholar, it's valid. This is what I learned from university, but after I was no, there are some big names over there that maybe you should trust more than others. So as I see, trust is a big issue right now, and not only in the workspace, but I think at a global level. What else have changed in the workspace? Because I think there's so many more changes that I've noticed myself.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned trust, because with the pandemic, what we've all experienced is a mental break from our usual routine that got us thinking about what are we doing? Is it valuable? Is it what I want to do? Is it meaningful to me? Is this something that I thought of doing or that I dreamed of doing? Is my life the life I wanted, basically? Is my work the work I wanted? And the pandemic gave us a break to stop and think. And what we've seen following the pandemic is a trend of people really starting to focus on meaning. People wanting to have meaningful work. People wanting to also contribute to something. Not just, tapping numbers or working on a laptop and, doing slides that are going to be scrapped in the next presentation. People want to do something meaningful. And following that, we've also seen a trend of disengagement as well. Because when you realize that what you're doing is maybe not what you thought would be valuable or what you thought would be meaningful, you disengage from work. So we've also seen a disengagement crisis. And at the same time, this also led to a lot of burnout as well. So burnout is something that has been highlighted throughout the pandemic, maybe also because of the pandemic itself, because the pandemic itself was very stressful, but we've also seen that there are other stressors at work that create the perfect environment for burnout to exist. And
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think most of us, when we experience burnout, you think something is wrong with me, You never thought that some global trends of I start to be aware that I need more meaning in my life. There is such a need for conversations like this, so we are aware of what are the alternatives or what would be the causes of us experiencing such a burnout. Because we do not live with the idea that something changed. You kind of feel things are still the same, we are back to work. But I think our inner narrative changed a bit because of this thinking time that we've got.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with burnout, burnout is a very complex process. It doesn't develop in one day. It develops over time. There's a lot of aspects that go into why it develops. So with burnout, the pandemic basically created the perfect time in that sense to think about what I've just said, is my work meaningful? Do I even find a point in it? And we've also seen the trend of quiet quitting, where people are just like, I'll just do my job responsibilities and whatever, which is disengagement at the end of the day, because maybe your best workers are actually the ones that are disengaged because they're done,
So that's the trend of quiet quitting, when you kind of give up, like you give up at work of like putting so much effort into
and this
like
is
you
usually
kind of just go with the flow.
Exactly. Maybe not really going with the flow, but kind of focusing only on what you need to do, not going over and above. Because when people see that, I went over and above in my work, I created so many opportunities, but I wasn't rewarded or I wasn't appreciated, or, when you feel like, I've done so much, but nothing was appreciated. This is where people are like,
But why do you think this happens? Because I think nobody comes to work with the intention, I'm going to disappreciate someone else's work.
Exactly.
Why do you think that happens?
One of the reasons is the fact that work is very complex and we have a lot of demands that create a lot of stress. And maybe as a founder, you didn't mean to not appreciate your employee, but this is basically what happened, right? Maybe the employee actually put a lot of work into something, but you have so many things to think about that you didn't really pay attention to, say thank you or give good feedback to that employee. So it's very, very complex. And when we look at big corporations, especially, what we see is that people who engage in quiet quitting are usually the good workers who are done. They're just mentally done with, always having to go over and above and not seeing anything rewarding coming out of there. So this is where the quiet quitting phenomenon kind of took place. It started after the pandemic.
Does AI play any role in this?
In quiet quitting? That's a very interesting question. I cannot say, I don't have an answer for sure, but I could speculate that having AI integrated into our daily work is or may create some threat, because it really is about how you appraise AI. You can appraise it as a threat or something that is going to steal your job or is going to create a lot of tension, or maybe your founder is going to come and tell you that AI is going to take your job and you really, really need to focus more.
We heard founders like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be that, or it could be appraised as a challenge. And if it's appraised as a challenge, you want to see, you're curious about how can you adopt AI in a way that it can improve your work and actually highlight your talents as a person. What happened with AI is that basically people who appraised it as a threat, they started thinking that AI might actually diminish their value. And this is where the threat of AI taking my job can come in, right?
Oh.
Because if I think that AI is going to take my job, it means that my talents are not valuable.
Is it linked with like weak sense of self, of like worth, self-value?
I believe there is some research that is currently looking into that. So the whole AI thing is newer in research and people are starting to pick it up in science as well. But it could be a question of self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is my belief that I can do my job well, my belief that I can deal with problems that are coming to me so that I actually have all the resources to get to my goals. This is self-efficacy. And with AI, what we can see is that maybe people felt like, this is a threat, and this diminished their self-efficacy. So if you appraised AI as a threat, that diminished your self-efficacy, which in turn maybe created, as you said, some diminished self-esteem and so on, if you really internalize that threat.
Yeah. In general, the fact that AI came to the market created a lot of anxiety and also a lot of uncertainty, because some of businesses may go out of business because of AI. Like you have to adapt really fast. You even have to, I think, update your identity, like the way you see yourself at work, because some of the skills that you thought were useful before, that you kind of hold them well, now they are not as appreciated because AI can do that much better. So how is this uncertainty playing a role in our jobs?
A huge one, actually. And the trend is not becoming in any way more stable. Uncertainty is increasing in today's workplace, and it will be increasing in the future as well. We've seen that with a lot of the reorganization trends following the pandemic, where, for instance, companies are scrapping the middle management, the mass layoffs. We don't know what will be happening. There is just a lot of uncertainty in general. But especially in the workplace, that also creates a lot of tension as well and a lot of stress for employees, but also for employers, because they need to think about how to cut costs, how to become more efficient, which is creating a lot of uncertainty on the market as well. So the word, probably the big trend word, is uncertainty. And then it's kind of manifested in different areas of our lives. We see this with social problems. We see this with the workplace. We see this with the economy. We see this a lot. And this kind of trickles down to even the employee who goes to work but doesn't know whether, I will have the same role as tomorrow as I have today. Will I have the same responsibilities? So uncertainty is becoming or has become after the pandemic, a very big trend. And resilience is something that will be very much needed in the future as well.
I see. So as a team leader, what can we do about that? And I know science has some frameworks. How those can be applied in the team? Tell me a bit more about work design.
So work design is actually a very good tool to use in order to understand what is actually happening in the company, and in order to have a very laser-focused way of looking at things that need change. Because with work design, so the SMART work design framework, what it basically does is that it focuses on 5 pillars of work design. And we're probably going to talk about them in more detail in the subsequent episodes. So basically you have a stimulating work. You have the pillar of mastery, where work design is supposed to bring you feelings of mastery at work. Agency pillar, that is focused on how much control I feel that I have over my work. The relational aspect, which is, as we talked about, relationships at work. And the tolerable demands pillar, which is basically whether the demands that I have at work are tolerable enough that I am performing well and I am engaged in my work and they're not giving me burnout.
So if I'm a team leader, if I'm an HR person, I should look at these 5 pillars of, is the work in my team stimulating enough for each employee? And everyone has different levels of stimulation.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, that's
that
becomes a
this
bit
is
more
where
complex.
you really have this. This is why it's so complex. We also started this episode. Work is very complex. And the value of such models, of such scientific models, is to reduce this complexity to something that is digestible for our brains.
So these are 5 pillars. So is my work stimulating enough? Do I feel like I master my job and I feel competent?
Yeah.
Do I have agency
part,
do I have agency? And also the fourth one was
the relational aspect, where you focus on, how are my relationships in my job? How are my relationships with my colleagues, with my supervisors, but also with the entire organization?
And
do I feel as part?
Yeah, and the last one is the tolerable part.
Demands.
Are the demands tolerable and can I deliver on them?
Yeah.
So 5 aspects that influence performance and well-being at work.
Definitely. Yes. This is a lens through which we can see what is happening in our workplace that will help founders and will help team leads understand how to then shift it in order to create the culture that they want to create.
You know what I learned so far as a leader, or by having a company, is that it's a very dynamic complexity. Yeah. So when I applied work design and I measured the work design of our team, I was shocked to realize that having a data-driven approach brings so much peace.
Exactly.
And also measuring the same elements over time, so you can see the progress of, or how well your interventions worked, or if they didn't.
Exactly.
Because we have lots of leaders that you're just not sure how to approach performance. And in general, business is already complex, figuring it out. Starting a business in general is already a big thing. And when you face that, oh my God, now I have to figure out how performance works. It's a complex system. Yeah. So having a data-driven framework that you can measure, elements that you can measure that are defined by scientists, it just gives you so much safety.
Exactly.
And peace
Especially
of mind.
in such an uncertain world, you have data that is actually telling you, hey, this is what is happening. This is where, maybe you need to pay more attention, or maybe have a talk with this employee and kind of figure out what is happening there and so on. So it is fascinating to really see the value of science being implemented, and like to me as a scientist, this is like very fulfilling, and like I see that actually this is helping a lot of people.
Yeah. To me as an entrepreneur is the same. Like it just gave me so much peace of mind, because you definitely want to do your best, but there's so many things.
Yeah.
And having a framework, it just brings this clarity.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I don't know how to approach like increased performance. There are so many elements that define it. It's not like one single thing. At the same time, you do want to take care of your team. I know personally, like pushing people and like getting them to work to their limits is not working long term. People do not want to work with you anymore.
Yeah.
So having this framework where we measure 5 pillars of the company, and within these pillars we have specific elements.
Yeah.
And in total we have around 15 elements.
Yeah, something like that. Some of them are more prominent than others, for instance, but they all kind of have their own role to play in how we perceive work design.
Yeah, and it's not that complicated, because for the first time when I heard you talking about work design, I was like, oh my God, this should be this complex framework that some scientists have developed somewhere. And actually when I saw the survey, that it's a simple survey with like, I don't know, maybe up to 20 questions that everyone in the team answers. And you get a score from 1 to 5 for each of these elements. It felt quite simple, like it's a no-brainer.
It's digestible, right?
It's super digestible. It's very digestible. For me as a person that I've never worked in HR, I never lead the team before. I was like, I'm gonna use this thing, and having these insights really gave me a direction on like, okay, these are the points, or like these are the blind spots that I have not know about, that they influence performance, and I should focus on addressing those things. So for those interested to apply work design, we do have a free survey that you can use. We will put the link in the description and you can just get it, apply it, and we will explain in the next episodes each pillar, like how to interpret it. Because after you get the data, one big challenge for team leaders and for HR people is, what do I do with this data?
It's like, what are these numbers? What are they telling me?
Exactly. And also in our case, so first time when I did work design with our team, I was super surprised to find out that feedback had the lowest score. I think we scored 2.9 on feedback. I was so ashamed. I was like, oh my God, I thought we are so talkative and we are sharing feedback so openly. But looks like we haven't. It was a blind spot for me. And my question next was, what do I do with that? And I remember I came to you, I was like, Iustina, what should we do about this feedback thing? So in the next episodes, we are gonna help you interpret the data. Let's say you do measure your work design. What do you do with that next? This is why we are here to share. We truly value, both me and Iustina, I think we vibed over the importance of science and this public free resource that we can use to make our life easier. I'm truly passionate about making psychological science more available to people, specifically self-therapy protocols. I think if we know like how to do, or like what to do when I have to set boundaries, what to do when I feel close to burnout. If we know these steps, our lives can be much easier and we can suffer a bit less.
Or actually have a fulfilling life.
Oh, yes. So yeah, a pleasure to talk to you, Iustina. I do really believe in the power of measuring work design and intentionally applying some interventions to improve our work design. And what I love the most about it is the fact that it helps you work with what you already have. It's not like a new thing that you should bring into your team, like redefine, like change the team. No, you measure how people are feeling right now in your team. And also what I really loved from what you mentioned are about these needs we have at work.
These basic needs.
The need to feel that we are competent, that we are mastering it. Tell me a bit more about that and we will close with that.
So just to be brief, because I don't know how much time we have left. The basic psychological needs, they're related to our motivation. So there is this theory called self-determination theory, which basically argues for which situations or what do we need to feel intrinsically motivated? Because we know that there is extrinsic motivation, like the carrot on a stick, basically. Like I'm going to get paid. This is an extrinsic motivator. I do my work because I will get paid, right? But then you also have intrinsic motivation, where you do things just because you want to. And what the self-determination theory argues is that in order to have intrinsic motivation, to do things just because you internally want to do them, not because there is a certain reward necessarily so, are 3 basic psychological needs that need to be fulfilled. One of them is autonomy, having control over what I'm doing, over my decisions, understanding that I have the autonomy to create these decisions and to make these decisions and to basically decide how I want to deal with my time and with my space and so on. The second one is competence, the need to feel that you're actually good at something. This motivates you, right? So you feel competent in your job, but also in life in general. And the third one is need for relatedness, because we are social animals by nature, and we need to relate to other people in order to feel intrinsically motivated. This is also what brings us meaning as well. So in order to be intrinsically motivated in our lives, we have these basic needs that need to be fulfilled. And this is exactly what can be applied through the work design questionnaire, where we can understand whether these needs are being fulfilled and what aspects of the workplace fulfill these needs, so that people can be intrinsically motivated. Because when people are intrinsically motivated, they are more engaged in their work. Talent is retained. They don't want to leave the company because their needs are fulfilled. And they also want to do a good job, right? And you also have higher organizational performance and success. So everybody has something to gain, basically.
I love the ease you talk. Like you talk with such a ease about performance and like meeting people's needs. On this other side, as a team leader, like I find it sometimes so challenging to understand what do these people need in order for them to perform. And thank you, Iustina, for putting some new definitions in my mind. And like as a leader, I think I'm just getting better at understanding my team, just because I listen to this and I clarify like, oh, maybe this need of mastery, when I give them feedback, that's a bit too harsh. I lower their need of mastery, and I should maybe also praise them. So that need is taken care for. So thank you. And I want to close this episode by saying, like, sharing some appreciation to all the scientists that
that's nice.
that are making our lives much easier. And we are really excited to talk and popularize some scientific frameworks here on how to increase performance and well-being at work. Because I truly believe when we are well, we work better. Thank you.
Thank you.